The silence would cost him everything he had worked for since childhood. Colin Kaepernick adjusted his helmet on the sideline, watching the crowd rise to their feet as one organism. Around him, 80,000 people waited for the familiar opening notes that had preceded every game for decades. Players lined up along the yard markers in perfect formation, hands over hearts, eyes fixed on the flag. The ritual had played out the same way countless times before. Some traditions felt unbreakable. The anthem began its slow, ceremonial march through the stadium speakers. Voices filled the concrete bowl, rising toward the night sky. Kaepernick remained seated on the bench, hands clasped in his lap. It was August 26, 2016. A preseason game against the Green Bay Packers, the kind of meaningless contests that normally drew little attention beyond diehard fans and local beat reporters. Most spectators hadn't noticed the quarterback's absence from the ceremonial line. Those who did assumed he was nursing an injury, reviewing plays on his tablet, or simply preparing for the next series. The cameras stayed focused on the flag, the color guard, the familiar choreography of American sports, but someone had seen what he had done. Someone always sees when truth challenges power. After the game, as players filed toward the locker room, a reporter approached him about staying seated during the anthem. The question came casually, almost as an afterthought. Perhaps the journalist expected a simple explanation about soreness or strategy meetings. Instead, Kaepernick's response arrived measured, deliberate, each word chosen with precision. He was ungoing to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppressed black people and people of color. To him, this was bigger than football. There were bodies in the street, and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder. The issues mattered more than any game. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. The reporter scribbled notes, his pen moving faster now. Neither man fully understood what had just been set in motion, what forces had been awakened by a simple act of sitting down. We tenors. The story had spread far beyond sports pages and local television coverage. Social media platforms erupted with opinions, reactions, and outrage from every corner of the political spectrum. Cable news networks picked up the footage, playing it on loop between talking head debates and expert panel discussions. By morning, Colin Kaepernick had become the most discussed athlete in America, not for his arm strength, his leadership, or his athletic achievements, for choosing to sit down during 90 seconds of music. The reactions split along predictable lines that had been drawn and redrawn throughout American history. Some praised his courage to use his platform for social justice, seeing him as the latest athlete to follow in the footsteps of Muhammad Ali and Jackie Robinson. Others accused him of disrespecting military veterans and core American values, viewing his protests as an attack on everything they held sacred. The volume increased daily. Death threats, mixed with messages of support in his social media accounts. Political figures from both parties weighed in with carefully crafted statements. The president took to Twitter. Kaepernick had spent 6 seasons in the NFL, building a career that placed him among the league's more accomplished quarterbacks. He had led the San Francisco 49ers to a Super Bowl appearance just 4 years earlier, guiding them through playoff victories that had seemed impossible. His statistics ranked him above many starting quarterbacks across the league. His mobility and arm strength had made him a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses. But statistics don't account for controversy. Numbers do measure the discomfort of team owners who prefer their athletes to entertain crowds on Sunday afternoons, not educate them about social injustice. As the 2016 season progressed through its 16-game schedule, Kaepernick refined his protest after consulting with military veterans who understood both patriotism and peaceful dissent. A former Green Beret suggested kneeling instead of sitting, explaining that soldiers knelt beside fallen comrades as a sign of respect. The gesture would honor those who had died in service while still making his point about racial inequality. Kaepernick accepted the suggestion, transitioning to kneeling during the anthem before each game. Teammates joined him occasionally. Safety Eric Reed knelt beside him in some games. Then others followed in smaller numbers. The cameras always found them, zooming in on their bowed heads while the music played and the crowd sang. Each image became a Rorschach test for viewers' existing beliefs about race, patriotism, and the role of athletes in society. The 49ers struggled throughout that season, losing more games than they won. Kaepernick's play fluctuated between brilliant and erratic. Critics pointed to his declining performance as evidence that his focus had shifted away from football, that the constant scrutiny and political debates had compromised his concentration. Supporters argued that the unrelenting pressure would distract any player, that performing under such intense examination would challenge even the most seasoned professionals. The team finished with a losing record, missing the playoffs entirely. In March 2017, facing uncertain prospects with a struggling franchise, Kaepernick opted out of his contract to become a free agent. His representatives expected multiple teams to pursue him during the free agency period. At 29 years old, he was young enough to play several more seasons. His resume included playoff victories and Super Bowl experience. He was talented enough, proven and experienced enough to contribute immediately to any roster seeking quarterback help. The calls never came. Week after week, as the free agent market developed, less accomplished quarterbacks signed with teams across the league. Players with weaker arms, fewer career wins, and lower completion percentages found new homes. Veteran backups who had never started a playoff game received multi-million-dollar contracts. Rookies and career journeymen were invited to training camps and given opportunities to compete for starting positions. Kaepernick worked out privately, staying in shape in California gyms, and throwing 2 receivers at local high schools. His agents reached out to teams, offering workout sessions and medical evaluations. They proposed meetings with coaches and general managers. The responses were polite but consistent. No interest, no openings, no fit within existing systems. By the start of the 2017 season, as teams across the league faced quarterback injuries and ineffective play at the position, Kaepernick remained unemployed. Teams claimed they had no interest in his services. Front office executives insisted his skills didn't fit their offensive systems. Coaches suggested he was unworth the media attention and controversy he would inevitably bring to their locker rooms. The explanations multiplied and varied, but the result remained constant across all 32 franchises. No contract, no offer, no tryout. The silence wasn't accidental. It was comprehensive. In October 2017, Kaepernick filed a grievance against the NFL, alleging that team owners had colluded to keep him out of the league because of his political views and protests. The legal process that followed would drag on for months, moving through arbitration procedures and document discovery. Depositions were scheduled with league officials and team executives. Subpoenas demanded internal communications and decision-making records. The case built slowly, methodically, like a prosecution assembling evidence of a conspiracy. During the proceedings, internal communications between owners and league officials began to surface. Text messages revealed concerns about the optics of signing Kaepernick and the potential backlash from fans and sponsors. Phone records showed coordination between teams during the free agency period. Email chains discussed strategies for handling media questions about the quarterback's availability. The paper trail suggested what many had suspected from the beginning. His exile was deliberate, coordinated, and effective. The evidence painted a picture of institutional that prioritized business interests and public perception over competitive considerations and merit-based evaluation. Teams that desperately needed quarterback help had chosen to start inferior players rather than sign a controversial veteran whose presence might alienate sponsors or create uncomfortable discussions in corporate boardrooms. The NFL, which prided itself on meritocracy and competitive balance, had apparently allowed political considerations to override talent evaluation and fair competition. In February 2019, nearly 2 years after filing his grievance, Kaepernick's case was settled. The terms remained confidential, sealed by legal agreements that protected both sides from further litigation. Legal experts estimated the payout in the millions of dollars, though neither Kaepernick nor the NFL confirmed any financial details. The league admitted no wrongdoing in the settlement. Team owners faced no punishment or sanctions. The agreement bought silence and closure, not accountability or transparency. The league eventually acknowledged its mistake, though the admission came years after the damage had been done. In June 2020, amid nationwide protests following George Floyd's death and a broader racial justice movement, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell publicly stated that the league had been wrong for not listening to players about racism and police brutality. He encouraged peaceful protest and promised to support players who spoke out on social justice issues. The words carried weight and sincerity, but they came 3 years too late to salvage Kaepernick's career. Kaepernick never played professional football again. While the commissioner spoke of change and progress, no team offered him a contract or even a tryout. He remained radioactive to an industry built on entertainment, revenue, and public perception. His career had ended not with injury, age, or declining ability, but with ideology and principle. The game had moved on without him. Other players who had kneeled during the anthem continued their careers with minimal long-term consequences. Some faced criticism and uncomfortable questions from reporters, but none paid the ultimate professional price. Kaepernick had become the symbol, the lightning rod, the cautionary tale that illustrated the cost of speaking truth to power. His name became shorthand for athlete activism and institutional retaliation. He turned to activism full-time, launching educational initiatives focused on racial inequality and supporting criminal justice reform organizations across the country. The work was meaningful and necessary, addressing the same systemic issues that had motivated his original protest on that August evening in 2016. He founded programs that provided legal aid to communities affected by police violence. He supported scholarship funds for underprivileged youth seeking higher education. He spoke at universities and community centers, sharing his story with audiences who understood the price of standing up for principle. But the activism, however important, wasn't the childhood dream he had pursued for decades with single-minded determination. It wasn't the goal that had driven him through years of training, competition, and sacrifice, through high school championships and college victories and professional achievements. The dream had been simpler: to play football at the highest level, to lead teams to victory, to test his abilities against the best athletes in the world. Every NFL Sunday served as a sharp reminder of what his principles had cost him, what he had given up to speak for those who had no voice. The irony was inescapable. He had lost his platform by using his platform. He had been silenced for refusing to stay silent. The very visibility that had made his protest powerful had also made him too dangerous to employ. The NFL needed its players to be symbols of excellence and entertainment, not conscience and controversy. The protest that had lasted 90 seconds would define the rest of his life. In stadiums across the country, the anthem continued to play before every game with clockwork precision. Players stood in neat lines with hands over hearts, eyes fixed forward on flags that fluttered in artificial stadium winds. The ritual proceeded as it always had, unchanged and unchallenged despite everything that had happened. New controversies emerged and dominated news cycles before fading into memory, replaced by fresh outrage and fresh targets. Years passed with mechanical regularity. Other athletes took stands on different issues, following scripts that had been written by Kaepernick's sacrifice. Some spoke about mental health, others about social justice, still others about political issues that divided their fan bases. The cycle of outrage and activism moved forward, but Kaepernick remained frozen in that moment when he chose to kneel for justice rather than stand for tradition. His name appeared in documentaries and academic papers about athlete activism. Scholars studied his case as an example of institutional power-crushing individual dissent. Younger players cited him as inspiration for their own protests, though few paid the same ultimate price. The machinery of professional sports had learned from his example, finding subtler ways to silence dissent while maintaining the appearance of supporting free expression. Sunday after Sunday, the games unfolded without him. Quarterbacks he had outplayed took snaps in stadiums where his name was no longer spoken by announcers or commentators. The broadcasts moved on. The storylines shifted. The drama continued as if he had never existed. Television ratings remained strong. Ticket sales continued. The business of entertainment absorbed his absence without missing a beat. In quiet moments, perhaps during commercial breaks or weather delays, some viewers might have wondered what had become of the quarterback who had chosen principle over pragmatism. But those thoughts passed quickly, replaced by analysis of current games and current players who understood the boundaries that could not be crossed. The stadium lights had dimmed long ago across countless venues. The crowds had gone home to their lives, their families, their own struggles with truth and consequence. The games continued without him, as they always would, as they were always designed to. He had spoken bold truth to power with unwavering conviction, and power had responded with perfect, absolute silence.